When the infamous spy Matahari was caught and executed for her crimes, she reportedly made one scandalous gesture to her firing squad. Matahari is the ultimate femme fatale, famous for her seductive dancing and for allegedly being a double agent. The name Matahari means eye of the day or sun in Malay, a fitting choice for a woman who at the peak of her career dazzled audiences across Europe. From Berlin to Monte Carlo to Vienna, she was an international sensation. But how much of that story was real and how much was fiction? She was born Margarita Zelle on August 7th in 1876 in the Netherlands. Her childhood started off privileged, but her comfortable life didn't last. In 1889, her father's investments tanked and the family went bankrupt overnight. The carefree days were gone. Then her parents split up, and soon something even worse happened. In 1891, at just 15, Margareta lost her mother. 2 years later, her father remarried and sent her away to live with her godfather, but she didn't stay with him for long. At 18, she came across a newspaper ad placed by a 38-year-old Dutch colonial captain, Rudolf MacLeod. He was stationed in what is now Indonesia and was looking for a wife. Matahari answered the ad, and just 4 months later, they were married. After moving to Indonesia in 1897, Hari quickly realized her husband had a drinking problem and a terrible temper, a truly dangerous combination. He physically and verbally abused her. Just 3 weeks after their wedding, he openly admitted to cheating on his new bride, not with one, but 2 women. Matahari left MacLeod for one of his colleagues, a Dutch officer named Van Reeds. During this time, she immersed herself in Indonesian culture, Hinduism, and dance, and changed her name from Margarita Zelle to Matahari. For some reason, Hari broke things off with Van Reeds and returned to her abusive husband in 1898. Despite their miserable marriage, MacLeod and Hari had 2 children together, a son, Norman John, and a daughter, Louise Jeanne. In 1899, both children became seriously ill, and tragically, Norman John died at just 2 years old, and most historians suspect his father was to blame. At some point, MacLeod had contracted syphilis. He then passed the disease to his wife and eventually their children. After their son's tragic death, Matahari and her husband desperately tried to treat the illness. Tragically, Jeanne would also later succumb to the disease at just 21 years old in 1919. MacLeod's infidelity had doomed his entire family. MacLeod's cruelty forever changed Matahari's view of love. Years later, she admitted that his brutal treatment had made her resent intimacy and fear love. It was a dark irony, considering she would become famous as a world-renowned seductress. In 1902, Hari moved back to the Netherlands and finally separated from MacLeod, but divorcing him proved very difficult. MacLeod fought her at every turn. The ordeal dragged on until 1906, when Hari was finally granted an official separation. Bitter and vindictive, MacLeod refused to pay child support, leaving Hari in a dire situation. She fought to provide for her daughter, but as a single woman in early 20th century Europe, opportunities were scarce. Then, one day, while Louise Jeanne was visiting her father, MacLeod simply refused to return her. Unable to financially support her daughter, Matahari made the heartbreaking decision to let her stay with her cruel father. But she promised herself that she would find a way to get her daughter back one day. Next, Matahari moved to Paris, determined to rebuild her life and save enough money to win back Louise Jeanne. She tried everything, teaching piano, giving German lessons, even attempting to work as a genteel servant, but nothing paid enough. As desperation set in, she turned to less conventional jobs, riding horses for a circus, and posing as a nude model. Hari soon hit rock bottom. To survive, she turned to sex work. In March 1904, she reached a breaking point. In a heartbreaking letter, she confessed she was considering ending her life. But she didn't. Instead, she emerged transformed. Hari stepped into the dazzling and scandalous world of exotic dance. She quickly captivated Parisian audiences, and with that, she became the infamous Matahari. So, who was Matahari? In early 20th century Paris, everyone wanted to know. Posing as a lost Hindu princess, she claimed to have learned sacred dances in her youth, including the mesmerizing dance of the Seven Veils. It was pure fiction, but the Parisians ate it up. Her act was deceptively simple. She glided onto the stage draped in delicate fabrics, which were removed layer after layer. By the end, she only had on her ornate golden headdress, shimmering armbands, and her signature bejeweled bra. On stage, she was bold, flirtatious, and utterly magnetic. But in her private life, she continued to work towards one goal. Even at the height of her fame, Hari never forgot her beloved daughter, Louise Jeanne. She sent dozens of letters, only to have them returned unopened. MacLeod refused to let Hari have any contact with her daughter. Each unopened letter deepened Hari's desperation, until, in a moment of sheer heartbreak, she attempted to kidnap her own daughter. The plan failed, and MacLeod's grip on Louise Jeanne remained unshaken. Soon, her career was also in trouble. Criticism mounted, and by 1910, the backlash reached a fever pitch. Matahari was accused of using her body as a cheap gimmick rather than possessing any real talent. As public opinion soured, Hari's career stalled. Yet Hari had already left her mark. Before her, Paris had never seen anything like her dancing. After her, exotic dancing was all the rage. As young dancers rushed in to take her place, Hari decided to bow out. On March 13, 1915, she performed for the last time. But she certainly did not fade into obscurity. Her next act would be even more scandalous. Matahari transitioned into her next role, courtesan. Her reputation as a seductress granted her access to the highest levels of European society. She entertained politicians, businessmen, generals, and daredevil pilots, traveling across the continent on the arm of one powerful man after another. For a time, it seemed she had landed on her feet, but soon the rug would be pulled out from under her. In a letter to her brother, she laid out the stark reality of her life. She saw only two possible futures: either win back her daughter and become, in her words, a decent mother, or, if that failed, embrace the glamorous life being offered to her. The letter ended with an eerie premonition: "I know that life ends in tragedy." She was right. Her days as a courtesan would pave the way for the most dangerous chapter of her life. In 1914, World War I erupted, and it affected everyone in Europe, including Matahari. Now in her 40s, Hari fell madly in love with 23-year-old Captain Vadim Maslov. Of all the men who had adored her, she called him the love of her life. But as always, fate had other plans. In 1916, Maslov was sent to the Western Front as a pilot. Disaster struck when he was shot down by the Germans. He suffered terrible injuries, including the loss of his eyesight. Desperate to be by his side, Hari tried to visit him in the hospital, but as a Dutch citizen, she wasn't allowed in. The Netherlands' neutrality made it impossible for her to enter Germany. Then, France's intelligence agency came knocking. They had a proposition: a way for Matahari to reach her wounded lover. All she had to do was say yes. In exchange for the chance to visit Captain Vadim Maslov, French agent Georges Ledoux presented Matahari with an impossible task: she had to visit her old lover, the Crown Prince of Germany, a man she had privately performed for many times before the war. Once in his company, she was to seduce him and extract vital information about Germany's World War I strategies, secrets that only the son of Kaiser Wilhelm II would know. Sadly, the Crown Prince, far from being a crucial figure in Germany's war efforts, was essentially a puppet in a carefully crafted PR campaign. He had little to no influence on how Germany waged war. The French had fallen for the propaganda, sending one of Europe's most famous courtesans to extract secrets from a man who didn't know any. This is where things take a fascinating and murky turn. Some sources claim Matahari reached Madrid, where she made contact with one of the Crown Prince's attachés. In one version, she was simply following through on her deal with the French, using the attaché to set up a meeting with the Crown Prince. But in the more notorious version, Matahari allegedly offered to switch sides, becoming a double agent for the Germans. To this day, the reasons behind Matahari's betrayal, if indeed it was a betrayal, remain unclear. Some speculate she did it for greed. Others suggest she was trying to gather enough money to escape Europe with her lover Maslov. But the most intriguing theory is that Matahari wasn't betraying France at all. Modern historians are beginning to question whether Matahari truly deserves her infamous reputation as a traitor. They suggest, in reality, she was following orders from French intelligence agents, that the French agents had instructed her that offering to become a German spy was the best way to gain access to the Crown Prince. Whatever the true story, one thing is clear: things went horribly wrong. In January 1917, French intelligence intercepted and decoded a series of German messages referring to a spy identified only as H21. The details of H21's life bore an uncanny resemblance to Matahari's own personal history. Armed with this information, the French quickly deduced that H21 must be Matahari. From the very beginning, strange circumstances surrounded the discovery of Matahari's alleged treachery. First, the French identified her shockingly fast. Too fast, some might say. It turned out that the Germans had been using a code they knew the French had already cracked. Additionally, the messages made it almost too obvious that the Germans wanted to implicate Matahari. These inconsistencies have led many to believe that the Germans didn't accidentally expose her identity, they did it on purpose. But why would the Germans blow their own spy's cover? Some argue that it was because Matahari hadn't provided them with any useful intelligence. In frustration, German intelligence decided to make a bold move, publicly outing her as a double agent in one of the most dramatic moments in espionage history. The Germans weren't the only ones frustrated with Matahari's actions. Despite her reputation as a master spy, she was actually terrible at her job. She frequently sent uncoded messages to her superior, and when the British captured her, she casually confessed to spying for the French. Matahari's glaring incompetence gave the French plenty of reasons to want her out of the field, which might explain the way they treated her during her trial. At her trial, the court accused Matahari of committing double espionage and causing the deaths of 50,000 people. When she heard these charges, Hari was visibly shaken. Her reaction became legendary. She allegedly gasped in disbelief and declared, "A harlot, yes, but a traitor, never." Unfortunately, her emotional defense didn't sway many, including her great love, Maslov. Captain Maslov, now blinded and recovering from his injuries, seemed to have lost all interest in Matahari. He coldly refused to testify in her defense. During the trial, the prosecutors presented the infamous H21 messages and bolstered the case with invisible ink found in Matahari's room, which Hari claimed was just makeup. The French argued that if Hari had once been involved with the Germans, what was stopping her from doing it again? However, the most damning evidence in the case wasn't the espionage, it was her seductive past. Did it have anything to do with her spying activities? No, but that didn't matter. The judge sentenced Matahari to death. Throughout her imprisonment, trial, and execution, Matahari maintained her innocence, but after a long interrogation, she admitted that she had accepted money from the Germans, but insisted she only passed on trivial information. She argued that this mistake didn't make her a traitor, just an imperfect person. Despite the sensational rumors that Matahari spent her final months bathing in milk, performing dances, and receiving gifts, the reality was far more grim. Her prison cell was filthy, infested with rats, and the atmosphere was tense, with loud fights erupting almost daily. After spending 3 months in a filthy cell, Matahari learned that her time was up. When the guards told her the date of her execution, she was in shock, repeatedly muttering, "It's impossible. It's impossible." Matahari took her final breath in the early morning hours of October 15, 1917. Journalist Henry Wales, who witnessed the execution, reported that Hari refused to be blindfolded as she faced the firing squad. When the time came, she calmly said, "I'm ready." She did not flinch when the soldiers opened fire, and even after being struck, her expression remained unchanged. Allegedly, staying true to her showgirl roots, Matahari blew a kiss to her executioners in her final moments. But Hari's story didn't end with her death. In the days following her execution, the French intelligence community began to question the handling of Matahari's case. They discovered that the agent who had spearheaded the campaign against her, Georges Ledoux, had some secrets. In his obsessive pursuit of proving Hari was a double agent, he had fabricated evidence. Why would he want to frame his former colleague? Well, during World War I, France was struggling. Their forces had mutinied, they'd lost crucial battles, and their resources were running out. It would have been convenient for the country to pin its troubles on a single villain, especially a seductive, treacherous woman. France had sensationalized Matahari's trial. Even the prosecutor admitted he wasn't entirely convinced of Matahari's guilt. But the biggest revelation came soon after her death. Just 4 days after Matahari's execution, French agents arrested the man who had accused Matahari of being a double agent. He was taken into custody, and ironically, he was accused of being a double agent. While he wasn't found guilty, the accusation raised a troubling question. Was Georges Ledoux the real traitor? Did he set up Matahari as a scapegoat, or was there something far more sinister at play? After facing the firing squad, Matahari's body met a terrible fate. Her corpse was reportedly used for medical research. Her head was severed and preserved in Paris's Museum of Anatomy. But in a bizarre twist, Matahari's head went missing in 2000, possibly as early as 1954. The official story was that during a relocation in 1954, the head was mislabeled and lost. It remains unaccounted for to this day. The story of an exotic dancer turned spy proved irresistible, and Matahari's life has inspired numerous films, books, and stage productions. One of the most notable is the 1931 film starring Greta Garbo. Some critics even suggest Matahari may have inspired the character of James Bond. Both share the persona of a playboy spy whose secret identity is known the world over. For a century, the French government kept the fact that Georges Ledoux was charged with double espionage a secret, only declassifying the documents in 2017. Why hide this detail for so long if it didn't have something significant to do with one of the country's most infamous espionage trials? In her hometown, the Frisian Museum features a Matahari room with 2 personal scrapbooks she compiled herself. Additionally, the Museum of Friesland launched a Matahari exhibition in 2017, 100 years after her execution. While a fire destroyed the house where Matahari was born in 2013, a statue of her still stands in her hometown, near the site of her birthplace. Thanks for watching History Exposé. If you love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. Don't forget to visit our main page, Factinate, for more incredible facts about everything.